Sports Shacks on ESPN 690 right now. Joe, glad to have you along with us. Bracketology, bracketology, bracketology. We'll talk all about it.
Well, you're allowed to say that word more than I am. I appreciate it.
Congrats on the new book. Tell us a little bit about it. Obviously, we think bracketology, and quite frankly, Joe, your name is synonymous. That's going to be kind of cool.
It's very cool, and I appreciate that. I guess one of the jokes I'm making here today on launch day, I've never had a launch day for a book before. Apparently, it is now possible to write a book in America without being able to read one. And so here I am preaching the gospel of, there it is, bracketology. And it's just so fun because, as you were saying, like March, man, it's a great sporting event that was taken away from us through no one's fault. And, I'm not minimizing the pandemic in any way. And obviously, we're in the toy department of life here in sports and in college basketball, and nobody died because the tournament didn't happen. And 500,000 people have died for real reasons. But that doesn't mean we can't miss it. We're human. And the fact that we've gotten to March, and now we're just about knocking on the door of conference tournaments. In fact, a couple of them get underway today, and a couple were played Sunday, early rounds. It almost feels like a little window into maybe coming out the other side of all this. At least I hope so. And I'm just thankful for that. As far as the book is concerned, we just wanted to do something that talked about the evolution of the tournament, how people have taken to bracketology, and how it's enhanced their knowledge of and hopefully enjoyment of something that we all love. It's not like pro sports. Pro sports are pretty much limited to the major markets, right? But every state, every region has their school, their squad, their college town, their place where their dad went, or crazy Uncle Harry, or whomever, and that they root for reasons that sometimes have nothing more to do with a cute mascot. And this, hopefully this book shines a little bit of light on the fun as well as the business, and most significantly, the process that creates that thing we all can't wait to hold in our hands on Selection Sunday night, which is that blank bracket, right, that gives each of us the chance to be right.
Absolutely.
And then the games start, and then we're all wrong.
Oh, of course. Yeah, by like 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday, potentially. Joe Lunardi with us here at Action Sports Shacks on ESPN 690. Brent Martineau, along with former Jags player Austen Lane. Joe, it's interesting. We were talking at the top of the show. I don't know if it was meant to be this way, but it almost feels like the bracket and March Madness, it was like the prelude to fantasy football is the way I described it. Like fantasy football now, people care about their fantasy football team. They don't necessarily always care about who wins on Sunday, even if it's their own team, as long as their fantasy team did well. I kind of look at the bracket that way. Yeah, we have our favorite teams. You have the team you rooted for. If they're not in the tournament, they're already out of the tournament. You still want bragging rights about your bracket and that piece of paper at the water cooler the next morning, or whatever drives you to beat that person you're competing with. It's become an odd thing in that way. I actually think it kind of led the way in a sense, and I don't know if the two are connected or not, to kind of the way we feel about fantasy football. Did the folks that thought about March Madness back in the day ever think it would be like this big?
Well, way back in the day when the tournament started in 1939, there wasn't even a Final Four. They just brought the last two teams, the East champ and the West champ, to Kansas City and played it out. I never really thought about the fantasy football connection. I think that's a great take and accurate. And I think I might have to tear up Chapter 7 now and do it over because it's a perfect analogy And I'll tell you why. Because, like if I walk around an arena at the NCAA tournament, not this year, but other years and hopefully future years, my work is essentially done at that point, right? And thank goodness. But what do people, like if I'm in line to get a hot dog or a beer or whatever, what do people want to tell me if they recognize me? Joe, let me tell you how good I'm doing in my bracket. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They want to brag, just like you're saying.
Yeah.
And just like at the water cooler, when somebody tells you, my flex pick did really great on Sunday, don't you want to just hit him in the head? Talk about, I don't care about your fantasy team.
Joe, I have a co-host. I have a co-host
People talk about it. People talk about their bracket success in exactly the same terminology. You are dead on.
Yeah, Joe, I have a co-host that talked about Kyler Murray like it was his brother for the last 5 months.
Hey, I picked him because there's some skill that goes into it. With brackets, sometimes it's all about luck, man. And that makes it even more annoying sometimes when my mom can pick a better bracket than I can, and she doesn't even watch college basketball. With that,
oh, dude, let me
go ahead.
Like one year in my own house, we do a family goal. I lost to a Cocker Spaniel. we fill in one for the dog. Like when our kids were little, we'd fill in one for the dog, and he would pick all the schools with dog nicknames and against all the schools with cat nicknames. And let me tell you, when UConn beats Connecticut in the final, that is not a good day for me.
That's awesome.
All right, Joe. So listen, man, since you're kind of like the godfather of bracketology, let's just call you, we hear the phrase Cinderella. And this year, like one could say, could Loyola be a Cinderella story? But here's the problem with Loyola. We've seen them be the Cinderella story before. And right now, I think where they sit, I think they're 21-4. Like, to me, they're a talented team. They have experience. Now, maybe not as good as they were a couple years ago, but they're still a solid team coming out of the Missouri Valley Conference. Is it right to call Loyola Chicago a Cinderella team, or are they just kind of maybe a front runner?
Well, knowing some of the Loyola people, I think they're thrilled just to be back in.
Yeah.
And to get their, kind of taste, and just making it back and being so good again kind of proves that it really wasn't a fluke, right? They were legitimately good. I mean, they won 30 games. And that's hard to do at any level because it requires, you're winning half your games on the road. So, yeah, I wouldn't call them Cinderella, but you're also not going to call them a blue blood either, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, to just be good, solid program is not a bad label. Mm-hmm. And maybe this year's Cinderella is another team for Near League. Maybe it's Drake if they get in, or maybe it's Belmont, which has only lost a couple games, or Winthrop, which has only lost 1 game. So those teams are out there. We just don't know who they are yet. Most of them haven't even qualified yet in their conference tournaments. And until we kind of see who they're going to play, then you kind of go like, all right, well, that's a matchup that could work for them because they're a good shooting team and that team plays a lot of zone or whatever. That team doesn't have much size, so they're not going to get beat up physically. Whatever the case may be, that will then help us maybe put a little bit of like an artist sketch drawing of who Cinderella can be.
Joe, I'm going to need you to be careful with the whole Belmont, Bruins thing just because I'm from Murray State, all right? So let's not mention Belmont too much around this show, just to let you know, because, obviously go Murray State Racers. Other question for you.
But wait. The last tournament we had, they both got in.
No, that's very true. But now Murray State's going to need to win something to get in because they're having a little down year. We'll see what happens. But Joe, so I'm from Wisconsin originally. Obviously, I'm Team Big Ten all day. I come to Jacksonville and I'm surrounded by the SEC. And usually it's known for football, right? You talk about Alabama, Roll Tide, roll. But now we got Alabama in basketball. And Nate Oates is obviously having this team play at a very high level right now. And Alabama's really on the outside of making that 1 seed. What has got into the Alabama Crimson Tide? Is this a flash in the pan, or are they about to be a powerhouse not only in football, but basketball now as well?
Well, it can't hurt, right, to bring basketball recruits in October to a football game.
You're not lying.
Right? And like Michigan's been doing that at the Big House for years, and I'm sure many, many, many other schools do. But, it's a victory for Nate Oates to just be the third most important sport at Alabama after football and spring football. So, I give him a lot of credit for that. And the fact, like the way they defend, and they have some older guys who can score. I like Alabama a lot. I don't know if they're Final Four good, but there are, the three so-called elite teams, Michigan, Baylor, Gonzaga, whatever order you want to put them in. History would tell us that they're not all making it through to the Final Four.
Joe Lunardi with us, Action Sports Shacks on ESPN 690. I know you got to run, do some more interviews, but not even your Cocker Spaniel would have picked first four out like 5 years ago. Michigan State, Duke, and Indiana that you had today. It's unbelievable for the Blue Buds this year. Go get the book, Bracketology, March Maddness, College Basketball, the Creation of a National Obsession. Joe, thanks for the time.
You bet. My pleasure, guys.